Since the NHL trade deadline is just now days away, the trade chatter has definitely picked up within the hockey world. With that being said, there's several players that I want to talk about that could be traded shortly. In this video, we're going to be going over 4 NHL players that could possibly be getting moved. We'll go over things like each player's stats, current situation, and where they could end up next. And with that, here are 4 NHL players that could be on new teams sooner rather than later. When this current campaign initially began, many believed that the Ottawa Senators would be playoff bound. Actually, I remember responding to a comment myself saying that Detroit or Ottawa would surprise some people by making it, and the Wings likely will. However, on the flip side, it's now looking like the Sens are going to finish out as bottom feeders. With that being said, it's not surprising in hindsight that rumors began to swirl that Captain Brady Tkachuk was on the trade block. Witnessing such a letdown as this, the Ottawa fanbase is understandably wanting some changes. However, according to GM Steve Staios, if he does indeed make a trade before the deadline, it won't be Tkachuk leaving Canada's capital. Instead, NHL insiders have begun to shift their focus to the 5th most offensively productive player on the Sens roster, Vladimir Tarasenko. Looking at the forward, there's a lot to like on the surface. Stanley Cup experience, a veteran presence, and an ability to be effective within a team's top 6. As it stands currently, Tarasenko has notched 41 points in 57 games played. Obviously, those aren't Art Ross getting stats, but they're enough to garner some interest from contending teams. Despite being a pending UFA, Tarasenko does have a full no-trade clause built into his contract. According to NHL insider Dave Pagnotta, however, Tarasenko would be open to waiving his clause to go to a Stanley Cup contender. Even still, teams' reluctance wouldn't have to do with the clause itself, but rather the cost to acquire him. As reportedly, the Senators are asking for a second-round pick in exchange for Tarasenko's services. Currently in the latter stages of his one-year $5.5 million deal, Tarasenko is reportedly interested in giving the Florida Panthers a chance. Besides Florida, the Vegas Golden Knights and Edmonton Oilers are looking like top potential landing spots for the Russian sniper. Recently, GM Craig Conroy dealt Chris Tanev to the Lone Star State, which gives the indication that he isn't done dealing some of his core players. Reason being, similarly to Ottawa, the Flames have been a disaster this season, and while they aren't necessarily one of the worst teams in the league, considering the caliber of skill on the roster, it's been disappointing to say the least. Nazem Kadri, Jonathan Huberdeau, and Jacob Markstrom haven't been enough to drag Calgary into the playoffs. Therefore, in an effort to shake things up, Conroy is reportedly open to dealing yet another defenseman, Noah Hanifin. And really, that isn't Conroy's full motivation, considering that Hanifin, who is a pending UFA, hasn't seemed interested in re-upping with the Flames. So far this season, Hanifin has recorded 35 points in 60 games played. A dynamic puck mover in his own right, Hanifin plays a solid two-way game that would give contending teams a potential edge. Hanifin's 6-year, $29.7 million deal is set to expire this summer. However, similarly to Tarasenko, Hanifin has some control over his fate, as the defenseman has a modified no-trade clause built into his contract, allowing him to submit an 8-team no-trade list. Even though it's not super limiting, there still could be a few interested teams finding themselves shut down. Despite this though, there's one team that Hanifin likely wouldn't say no to, the Boston Bruins. A Massachusetts native, Hanifin spent his college days playing for Boston College, the same team that Johnny Hockey once represented. And according to The Athletic's Pierre LeBrun, the interest goes both ways, as the Boston Bruins are reportedly one of the 3 Atlantic teams interested in Hanifin's services, along with the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Florida Panthers. Even though, yes, it would be quite the homecoming, the Bruins may have a hard time acquiring him, knowing that their prospect pool isn't the thickest, and that they don't have any selections for the first few rounds of this year's draft. It's going to be nearly impossible to produce an adequate return. Regardless, I think most of us can agree, even if it isn't a Boston sweater, Hanifin will likely be sporting some new colors by the deadline. Speaking of Calgary, another obvious player who could be moved from Cowtown is Jacob Markstrom. Due to his recent statements he made to the media, the netminder has quickly moved up the trade bait boards despite having a full no-move clause. And when asked if he was still wanting to stay in Calgary, Markstrom replied with, "The whole situation and everything, am I happy about that? No, I'm not. And I think it could have been handled a lot different from up top," he says. Many believe these statements were directed at the fumble of a retool that has been attempted in Alberta. Knowing that he's disgruntled leads to logical speculation that he could be willing to waive his clause in order to be dealt. Even though he hasn't been on the greatest team, Markstrom has still been able to shine in net for the Flames. Currently, the goaltender is tied with 3 other goalies for 4th in save percentage with a .914, and he's been able to impressively do this with a 21-15-2 record. Recently, Pierre LeBrun revealed that not only have the New Jersey Devils had interest in Markstrom, but they've also come pretty close to acquiring the netminder for real. In fact, also according to LeBrun, the Devils are willing to take on the rest of Markstrom's contract without salary retention needed. Currently, Markstrom would demand a cap hit of $6 million a season up until 2026. Even though he does have a no-move clause built into the contract, knowing that it was close to fruition previously means that Markstrom is likely open to the change of scenery. The Devils' known Achilles heel for quite some time now has been between the pipes. Markstrom would give New Jersey some needed stability in net and allow for the Devils to be a more well-rounded team in general. And yet another team that has disappointed this season is the Pittsburgh Penguins. Despite the fact that Captain Sidney Crosby has been having one of his best seasons in years, it still hasn't been enough, unfortunately. As it stands, the Penguins are out of the playoff picture entirely, giving GM Kyle Dubas little reason not to sell at the deadline. For months now, the name that's been in NHL insiders' mouths has been Jake Guentzel's. Reason being, logically, the pending UFA would offer the most return. When healthy, the forward has been notching over a point per game on the first line alongside Sidney Crosby and Brian Rust. Guentzel, who is on a bargain of a contract, has an AAV of only $6 million. However, he does have a modified no-trade clause for the last 2 years of his deal, meaning that if he were to be traded, he could submit a 12-team no-trade list. With 52 points and 50 games played, Guentzel has proven time and time again to be a solid playmaker and finisher. One issue for potential suitors is the fact that the Minnesota native is currently on the LTIR. However, things have been looking up as far as his recovery is concerned. According to Pittsburgh Hockey Now, Guentzel took to the ice for the optional morning skate prior to his team's match against the Calgary Flames. Another obstacle for interested teams is the fact that Dubas, according to NHL insider Elliot Friedman, is more interested in prospects than draft picks. From what I understand, Pittsburgh has told teams that they are more interested in 2 prospects as opposed to a prospect and a first rounder. Friedman said. They prefer prospects over picks. That's what Pittsburgh has told teams. They've told several teams. Friedman also indicated that the team is going to honor Brian Rust's full no-move clause, allowing him to stay put in the Steel City. As for Guentzel, the name tied to him time and time again has been Edmonton, but insider Frank Saravalli has dashed Oilers fans' hopes here recently. I don't really think Jake Guentzel is an option. As a pure rental, I don't see them being in that mix. First off, they can't afford him, and second, I don't think he would want to re-sign in Edmonton anyway. In pencil, cross him off the list, Saravalli said. Also, according to Saravalli, the Carolina Hurricanes, Colorado Avalanche, Arizona Coyotes, and Detroit Red Wings could be in on Guentzel. The Vegas Golden Knights have also been suspected as a suitor due to the cap space they have due to Captain Mark Stone's injury. In conclusion, for me personally, it's going to be hard as a Pens fan to see Jake Guentzel in any jersey without a Penguin on it. Regardless, this deadline is going to be a fun one to talk about and to watch unfold. If you enjoyed this video and aren't subscribed, be sure to hit the subscribe button for more NHL-themed content. If you're already subscribed and consuming my content on the regular, I'd like to invite you to join my Patreon. With plans that start at just $1 a month, you'll receive perks such as unseen analytics, monthly shoutouts, and video previews. Simply click the link below to get started. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.